Boom, baby, we're live. What's up, everybody? It's me, MLD. Frame, leadership, and relationships. How to lead without actually saying a word. You guys asked us, do you want to learn about frame and being a man and how it is absolutely necessary to have a successful long-term relationship? It's the number one thing that modern men have no idea about, and it's the most important thing. This is why so many of these guys are failing in dating right now, because their fathers didn't teach them. It's kind of a dying art. And I'm here with Wraith, and Wraith has been working with us at the Masculine Empowerment Network for many years. He has also worked with Paul. Wraith personally knows Paul and myself. Paul is out this week and next week. He is doing some military training and he is not able to attend. However, the show will go on, and we got Game Room 11 here. And we're going to talk about this because last week a lot of you guys were organically talking about this. Wraith, I just think we should just jump straight into it. Do you want to say anything before we get going?
No, not really. We can talk. I probably want to start with frame. And, one of the things that a lot of guys are having problems with is not building a basis for relationships. And a basis means that, you have to have a base yourself. And that means you having frame. As I've said in the groups that I've lectured in and stuff like that, everybody lives in a frame. It's just whether you're living in your frame or someone else's frame. And most people that fail in relationships, they're living in someone else's frame. They're not living in their frame. And they're not happy. And overall, that doesn't make the other person happy either. So we'll talk a little bit about frame. We'll talk a little bit about, communication and a little bit about relationships.
Yeah, great stuff. I think a lot of people don't know. So when I first started live streaming in 2019, I just used to say, money muscles game, money muscles game, money muscles game. And then, I went on my own personal journey of having tremendous success and then, really just dating a lot of girls, having a lot of fun. And I realized that on my own personal journey to understand dating and become a master at it, that frame was a extreme foundation of everything in my life that I really didn't have dialed in. Somebody's saying, can I call? And you can ask questions in the chat, send a super chat. You can send different types of super chats, and we will allow you to get all your questions answered, because we have a curriculum we're gonna stick to here, but it is all about frame. And to answer your question, we will just send it our way, and we got you. But going back to what I was saying, my personal journey made me realize this is the most important thing. And without frame, you are most likely going to self-destruct, or someone is just going to put you in a position where you're not really happy. And when you're in someone else's frame, you're not at the top of their to-do list. Just put it that way.
Well, and you're not really at the top of your own to-do list, because you're constantly seeking validation. You're constantly trying to satisfy the needs of someone else with disregard to your own needs.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes you reactive. Okay. I just published a book. It's called Become the Operator. And it talks about being reactive, or being, sovereign. And if you're sovereign, you're operating within your own frame. And the operator is really about that, operating within your own frame and being that person you need to be for you, so that you can be that for other people.
Frame is very loosely defined these days, because people who make content, a lot of them truly do not live what they preach. And if you are not truly aligned, then you can't truly define it. So, frame was something we really started pushing hard in the Masculine Empowerment Network around 2020 during the pandemic. If you were to define frame clearly for someone watching, and so we can have a clear definition that we can build upon for the rest of the show, what is frame?
Okay, frame is a psychological term used to describe how you view the world and how the world views you. Okay. And in order to understand what your frame is, there's a lot of things about you that you need to start figuring out. As you see, you just popped up the books. I've got Frame Under Fire, The Hypergamy Dilemma, Becoming the Operator, and Manhood 101. The first book I wrote was for an old friend of ours, Thor, when he was alive. And I put that in one of his series, and it was totally about frame. But the first book I wrote was Manhood 101. I published Thor's book first, and then I published Manhood 101. Manhood 101, it brushes on frame, and it gives you a foundation. But, the biggest problem with frame is everybody says, well, I need frame, or I'm in my own frame. Well, are you really in your own frame? Part of that means, do you know who you are? Do you know what you value and what your values are? And how do you behave when people test you or put you under pressure? Or if someone's not putting you under pressure, the situation is putting you under pressure, how do you behave? And do you control your emotions? Are your emotions ruling every decision you make? Or are you just pausing, thinking about it, and making a decision based on the data or information that situation is providing you? That's kind of what the basis of frame is. If you don't have an understanding of all those as you're working through your life, you're constantly going to move from one person's frame to another. And the people that really lack frame are always seeking validation, and they're not self-validating. And we've talked a lot of bit about this in the webinars and stuff. And yourself, as we've gone through, and I've worked with people in the webinars as well as on my own, that's kind of the biggest thing they're doing. They're trying to validate themselves through other people's expectations and other people's beliefs of what they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the self-validation thing is something that a lot of guys don't know what it's about. And, we're going to go into that deeper as well. But frame, if you were to sum it up, it's basically, what are your rules for your life? Like for me, for example, if you come into my house, you have to take off your shoes, right? I don't like people wear their shoes in my house. My house is immaculate. And I don't want people wearing their shoes around my house. And if you disobey me, I will tell you to leave. And if you don't leave, I'm in Florida and I have guns. You're going to leave, So that's just my frame, and that's how I plan to enforce it, And the thing is, if you do not have your own set code, then, it's going to be hard for you to enforce a standard in a relationship as the man, because you are going to have a standard that the woman must be upheld to in order to have a safe, happy, healthy relationship for the both of you. So an example of frame is like if someone does something that offends you, and like in your stomach, you feel like that gut, like, I don't really like that. I guess maybe you don't like if somebody slaps you on the chest or something, or calls you boy or something. We all have our little things that piss us off. And when people violate our frame, it is up to you to absolutely stick up for yourself. And frame is connected to your inner game. If anything, frame is inner game. Would you say that, Wraith?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that 4 or 5 years ago, and as the Men Empowerment Network was forming and changing, and when we talked about that, that you really have to understand what you want, and if you understand what you want, you can set boundaries, standards, and all those things that you need to do in order to build at least a happy environment for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you can build a happy environment for yourself, you can find someone to build a happy environment with. And like I said, but as a man in the relationship, your frame has to be rock solid to attract the woman that's going to appreciate that. And way too many young men these days, and even older men, don't have a rock solid frame. And when we talk about, frame, if you just start doing the frame statement, start doing the work to develop a frame, you're going to develop boundaries. You're going to develop standards. You're going to understand your values. You're going to understand why you believe what you believe. I mean, I used to use, and you were talking about a code. I just did a video recently on my channel about a man needs a code. And that code is what is basically what writes your frame statement. And we used to have people write frame statements. And, you know, if that's too much work for you, you're probably never going to get the frame that you want.
Right.
You know, and you know yourself, over the last 5 years, we've worked with a lot of guys, and most guys don't even put the effort into doing that.
Well, that's what I'm noticing, especially now being here down in the grounds in America. It seems to me that the number one issue the men have seems to be a morale issue, because nobody is trying to do anything for the most part. Let
Well,
alone,
a lot of that has to do with social media and the way social media and media in general tells men how they're supposed to be.
right?
You know, it's not that men don't feel that something's missing,
Mhm.
but then they feel guilty about something being missing.
Mm.
You know, and you're getting inundated hour after hour, minute by minute, second by second sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, you're supposed to behave. And if it doesn't feel right to you, you just suppress it and you behave that way anyway. That's not living in your frame. That's living in some societal construct of frame.
Right. Well, you know, it's something that is sorely needed, because I also believe, because the men have, you know, close to no frame, that that's why the women in America right now are kind of running amok, you know, because guys are not telling them clearly, when they're violating, when the women are violating the men. They're just, you know, taking it too much.
Well, I think most men don't explore to understand what's being violated on them.
Mhm.
You know, you just take, for example, you know, a young man that says, you know, he's been told his whole life, hey, you have to care about her feelings. You're not supposed to, you know, damage her feelings or hurt her feelings, but it's okay for her to hurt yours,
Right.
you know, and because she's a woman and she understands that she's getting hurting your feelings. I don't find that true most of the time when I talk to the young men, and they try to express it. They just the woman doesn't understand them, you know. And one of the things is because they've lived under her boundaries and under her standards so long, and they've never tried to enforce their own boundaries and standards. But she has an expectation now that this is the way you're supposed to behave, and if you violate that, then you're wronging me. You
Yeah.
know, and
And
that's a bad way to enter a relationship. I'll just say that.
yeah, I agree. And I feel like the girls are so used to guys just submitting to them nowadays. So then that if you don't act like a submissive male to them, they are kind of looking at you like you're crazy. Like, what are you doing?
Well, yeah, I don't blame them because that's what the media is telling them too.
Yeah.
You're the boss woman. You deserve expectations. You deserve, you know, boundaries. You deserve standards. It's men that don't deserve any of that. You know.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat is also saying it's the media, which it is. It's social media, it's TikTok, it's, you know, TikTok is a huge thing. TikTok is absolutely a Chinese psyop. I don't care what anybody says. And it's working swimmingly, quite frankly. Because any girl that I know that like frequently uses TikTok is not relationship material. I'll just say that at best.
Yeah, and I see that one guy says every time I express that to a woman, they leave me. You know, then that's probably not a woman you want to be with.
Oh, here, this one, yeah,
You know, no, it's probably not someone you want to be with
and
because
that's okay.
yeah, it is okay. You know, and because here's the thing, you know, when you get into a relationship, it's supposed to be mutually enhancing. Okay, it's not a one-sided relationship. All right, because then it feels more transactional than it really is, or it should be. So, way too many men live in transactional relationships.
Yeah.
That's where if you look at Robert Glover's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, that's where the nice guy syndrome comes from. Because you're living in a transactional relationship. And she is open about her transactionalism, but you're covert about yours.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen what he's doing now these days?
No, I haven't.
No, he's openly in a relationship with his wife, cucking him now. His Mexican wife.
Yeah, that's not a good thing, but
no, it's not a good thing at all. You know what I realized too, man? I just think what we are offering guys and the actual transformation that we have given people over the years with this channel and our coaching in the Masculine Empowerment Network, it's priceless. I mean, and it's so nebulous to describe to a lot of people out there because I don't think people realize how exactly lost they are. They couldn't even tell good content if they wanted to. You know what I mean?
I don't think they're lost. I think they're indoctrinated.
Mm.
Okay, and yourself. It rises to rise out of indoctrination takes a lot of will.
Mhm.
Okay, and that behavior becomes a habit because you do get something for it.
Mhm.
It's not what you deserve, but you're getting something for it.
Mhm.
And when a guy gets to the point where he says, I want something else, or I'm going to step away from women because it's no longer pleasurable to me.
Yeah.
That's a time you need to start looking at you and quit looking at them. Okay, because if you continue to look at them, you're going to become black pill.
Yeah.
You're gonna despise women and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you're not negotiating, the sexual marketplace the way it should be. All right. And you're never going to find the woman that you deserve because you're not looking anymore.
I truly believe just like cold calling in sales is the hardest but also fastest path to money. I also believe that still cold approach, it still works. And in the climate that we're in here now in the United States of America, because it's the hard thing to do and because you do need a volume of approaches and a volume of dates to find a good woman, I think it is truly the last real bastion to find like quality women because women are also quitting dating apps. Men are flooding to them. So the circumstance in America is very unique.
I mean, it'll probably turn into, the 20% of men that can have, sex with women are going to be, they're only going to be having sex with the 1% of women. It's going to flip because men have allowed women, and it's based on societal norms, social constructs that we've, been allowed to inundate us with for the last 10 years. Women are now the power brokers of relationships, sex, and life. And that's not sustainable.
Right.
I mean, you see it in, our the rate of births and stuff in this country. And I mean, and I am not anti-women. I am not, and you know that.
Yeah, me neither.
What I am is really anti-men giving up.
Yeah.
Anti-men not taking responsibility for themselves, not setting standards for themselves. Because yourself, you're a guy, you're a high standard guy. You know yourself. If your standards are high, women are going to be attracted to that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like game becomes natural. because women are now seeking their attention as opposed to you seeking their attention.
Mm.
And that's where every man should be, and we're not there anymore.
Mm. Do you think this was intentional?
I think. Do I think it's intentional? I guess in some respects, yeah, but in other respects, it's just the way things go when people's desires go uncontrolled.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said it on this podcast. I've said it on other things. The only thing that bothers me about feminism isn't feminism. The thing that bothers me about it is they want to take the worst behaviors of men and say this is what a man does.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. And totally negate all the good behaviors or all the good traits that men for hundreds of thousands of years exhibited. And the reality is not every man is, a dog. Not every man, is an abuser.
Right.
It's a small percentage. And if you just look at, the statistics on cheating, you look at the statistics on spousal abuse and stuff like that, it's a very small percentage of men.
Mm.
But women are trying to classify that all men are this.
Yeah.
If one man did it, they're all going to do it.
Yeah, it's a sight to see, and I think that's why having Frame is more important than ever, because a lot of these women will intentionally mischaracterize you due to their own personal flaws. Since I've been back in the United States of America, the amount of fucking crazy, unstable, unhinged women I've met is pretty alarming. Like probably more than my whole 11-year stint in Japan. And I think it's because they're just like guys are doormats in America. That's why I did the episode called Midnight MLD the other day when I said, American men have become weak because they have. I'm walking the streets here and seeing this, and it's like nobody is telling these women, hey, like your ideas are stupid. You're not that cute. Yes, you are fat. Like, nobody's like putting these chicks in check. And like I said, when you do actually do it, they act so appalled because they're so used to getting their way. And yeah, this is not sustainable, talking about that. But what do you think is going to be the outcome of this? Because it is not sustainable for sure.
I'm forever the optimist.
Yeah.
I do see young men turning around. I do see, the newer generation of some women turning around.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people that are in the middle that are going to save us. It's not the extreme of the I hate men, I hate women group, or the group about, ride the wave of destruction. Those people aren't going to save us one way or another. It's going to be the people in the middle, the people that develop balance in their life, develop boundaries, standards, goals, those kind of things. Those are going to be the people that save America. Mm. It's not, the radical left or the conservative right. It's going to be those people that can understand themselves, understand their own flaws, and work on that. And those are the people that are going to be in relationships.
Mm.
Life has a way of purging, the undesirables. It's we're all mammals. And if the undesirables don't breed, or the undesirables live in excess, it has a way of purging.
Mm. Yeah, I mean the whole trad wife thing has started, and that is, I think, a response to the country going way too left, becoming really very weird. And it is pretty evident to people who've been around to see exactly what's happening.
Well, my only concern would be if you're looking for a traditional woman, don't try a feminist wrapped in traditional ideals.
Yeah,
because they're not that much different.
Yeah.
you know. And like I said, it's hard for young women today because they've heard in school, they've heard on every TikTok and every YouTube channel that they makes them feel good about themselves. They've heard that, all those feminist ideals, and they haven't scratched the surface on what does that do to society? Where did it come from?
Yeah.
So just wrapping Jesus around that doesn't make it any better.
Yeah. And I think they don't even, dude, I think they don't even really realize how we have made life so good for them. They think they don't need us, which is just
right.
Hilarious.
Well, and the bad part about it is the counter movement is, we have men that are so. Did you lose me?
I'm here.
Okay. I said the counter movement is we have men that are so degraded that, they've given up. It's the other side of victimhood. Women sit there and they feel if they're not being entitled, that they're victims. And men are adopting that same philosophy. And that's the thing. Are we going to allow young men to be that way? I mean, I was, I'm in a couple of men's groups, and I was answering one post in a man's group, and he was talking about, not having anyone to celebrate Father's Day with. Well, here's the thing: are you a father? And that's the thing. It's if you have the expectation that you want someone to celebrate Father's Day with, you better go out and become a father.
Yeah.
Because it's not a celebration. It's not a celebration.
The way. Yeah, I would say, I do know that when we talk about Gen Z and politically, men are definitely moving more right. The data shows women are still moving left, despite even the whole trad life thing. You know what I mean? But I think, how do you think this is going to resolve itself, in your opinion? How is it actually going to play out? Men, because here's the thing: young men are not having sex. People are isolated and alone. All data is showing that it's not getting better. And how do we get guys, frame, all that kind of thing? What do you think? How do we dethrone women from you said the power brokers of relationship? How does that happen?
And that comes from a man having frame, all right, and setting standards for himself, and understanding that, she's the prize in some respects, but he's the prize also. I wrote the book I wrote, Solving the Hypergamy Dilemma, talks a lot about this. It's quite a large book, and it's got graphs and stuff in it. But what really what really goes on is that, men have to save themselves. No one's coming to save them. Women aren't going to change their mind until, they feel that there's more value to be with a man than not. And you see that changing in society.
I'm listening here.
Yeah, I was just looking at the chat. Someone said, "Oh, Geezer doesn't know. Let me call in." So
you're getting insulted online. That means you've made it.
Yeah.
You want to come on the stream? Here, send $100 and you could come on the stream. But yeah. So, but how are these guys saving themselves? That's what I'm trying to say. I want an actual kind of logical solution here. How do you see it unfolding and things getting better? But how do you see men getting framed, for example?
Well, like I said, I think if you one of the ways is to go into men's group or find a mentor, the stuff that has a frame and stuff that you want, or at least lives that lifestyle that you want to live. A lot, since the beginning of time, young men have always modeled older men that they, saw as the image of what they wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And one of the problems we have right now is there's not enough old geezers, as he said, that, that these young men can model,
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the problems. There's no longer any rite to passage for young men. And they don't create it for themselves because they don't understand, or they've forgotten what it is. Never been introduced to it.
Do you know that's why I went to Japan? I was like, this is my own personal rite of passage. Do you know that?
And most men end up having to develop their own rite of passage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you look at when we're in the groups and stuff, I think it really helps for men to talk to each other. I mean, your groups aren't just 18, 19, and 20-year-olds.
Right.
They're 18 to 50-year-olds. And if a 50-year-old man has decided, boom, now's the time for me to change my life, he's got a lot of experiences he has to go through and evaluate.
Right.
And the decisions he made. And that's a big process for him. 18-year-old has less. 18-year-old can start, a little bit fresher.
Shut up and take my money.
All right, we got a super chat. Hold on, let me come back up here. Mr. Wolf, $10 super chat. Frame is being able to walk away. I've always been able to break up from a woman, to not have sexual access or have a dry spell. I think a lot of dudes put up a lot of BS just for a little bit of sex. Yeah, that's the majority of, I would say that's the majority of a lot of relationships.
Yeah, and they do that because they're seeking validation.
Mm-hmm.
And having sex shouldn't be a form of validation.
Right.
It's a form of making families, children, or pleasure. It's not a form of validation.
I think that's a perfect segue there, because frame is connected to leadership. So how is frame connected to leadership? And is leadership mandatory for a man to have success in a relationship?
Well, leadership starts with self-leadership.
Right.
And if you can't lead yourself and you don't have the idea about, what you need to do for yourself, how are you going to lead anyone else? And that kind of, it's diagnosed through, your behavior, your values, and those kind of things, and how you treat other people. So, that's, and we can talk about leadership as a whole, but that frame statement is one of the things that you do to establish what kind of leader you're going to be. Not just in relationships with men and women, but in relationships with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Because how you behave with everyone and it starts with how you lead yourself through life, the values, the beliefs, and stuff that you have.
Right. Does the man have to be the leader in the relationship between the woman and him? Yes or no?
Yes.
Right. Why?
Because most men have the opportunity to, think rationally first and then, express it emotionally. Most women have the way they communicate is they emote about it, and then they try to explain it rationally. And when we talk about, how you think and how you pull emotion aside, use emotion for data, and make decisions based on the data, and then express it in an emotional way, that's more balanced.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say I've never seen a woman make a good decision or anything like that, because I have. But for the most part, when emotions get involved, it's a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a clear, thought out process of solving. It's a reaction.
Yeah, I think they just can't, and I think that's a big problem with a lot of these relationships now. A lot of modern relationships, men are just defaulting to the women leading, and it's just not working out for everybody involved here. It's not sustainable.
I think they default because they don't have the basis or experience to lead. You know,
And take my money.
We got another $10 super chat. I feel like you got to be the Joker from the Dark Knight. When Batman is beating him up with all his Batman's power, he can't convince the Joker to tell him anything. The power of a firm no means so much. I agree. I definitely agree. And I would
Yeah.
say,
and most men can't say no.
right.
You know, because of the fear of, well, I'm going to lose her opinion of me. You know,
Right.
And if you're worried about losing her opinion of you, you've probably already lost it.
Leadership is mandatory. If you don't have leadership abilities, you're just not going to get into a relationship. It's period. You know, women want to be led, and again,
they do, and a lot of leadership is about understanding communication,
mhm,
how to communicate. You know, how to communicate what you want, what you need from her, understanding what she's expressing, you know, to you, and interpreting that. And if you can't interpret it, asking enough questions and get enough information so you can.
mhm.
A lot of guys don't do that. It's, you know, the phrase I hate the most, happy wife, happy life. You know, that's not always true.
Mhm.
You know, it may get you a year extended on your relationship, but it's not going to sustain you long term.
Yeah.
If it does, you're going to be 80 years old together, throwing shit across the room at each other.
Yeah, she should be working to make you happy as the man, not the other way around. Because you know that's the healthiest dynamic. You know, looking at relationships and what's going on nowadays, you know, we have strayed away from normalcy, and that's why everybody's suffering. You know, women should not be the ones leading and doing all, because women kind of are socially leading America for the most part, at least in the places I see. You know, it's always some chick doing something. Guys are just in the background, like whimpering, or you know.
Well, that's because we're not, the country doesn't lead itself by values and ideals now.
Mhm.
It leads itself through how it makes me feel.
Mhm.
You know, we've done away with, you know, for the most part, we've done away with those things that drove the country to where it is,
Mhm.
you know, before all this happened. And that was, you know, truth, honesty, integrity, patriotism, all those things. And that's not to say that, you know, all the people before us didn't make mistakes, because they did. You know, and I'll tell you, my generation, we've made mistakes. But, you know, you still got to have values. You've still got to have those intrinsic beliefs in what is right and wrong.
Are you Gen X or Boomer?
I'm a boomer
When were you born?
at 1960.
1960? 60?
Yeah.
Okay. When's the Boomer cutoff?
62.
62. Okay. And then after that's Gen X or
Uh,
no?
yeah, Gen X, then millennials.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Well, the way things are looking now, I'm curious to see how this plays out, because I have done research about this. And the thing is, men have to become leaders. I mean, we really are in that age old thing where they say, you know, hard times create hard men, right?
Mhm.
Hard times create, strong men. You know, I talk about that, and its importance often on the show. And I personally truly believe, like right now, that this is where we are. We are in the, I would say we're heading into the weak men create hard times. I don't think we're heading out of it. I think we're going from good times create weak men. I still think we're transferring. How about you?
I would say we're in the weak men, and You're at the bottom end of that, and I'm at the top.
Okay, so you think we're heading into hard times?
I think we are heading into hard times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm not talking about financially or all that stuff. What I'm talking about is the hard times of people not understanding their identities.
Yeah, that's huge right now with all the identity politics and all that.
Yeah, and not having faith in what was built before them, and trying to tear it all down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to put us in hard times. I guess I would probably say I'm at the top of the arrow in weak men,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that arrow eases into hard times.
Right.
But it's going to be the strong men to pull us out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Will I see it? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, we will find out. And it's very interesting seeing it now on the ground since I've been in America, because there are other countries that are not in situations like this. This is our own personal struggle.
I think they are. I just think they're behind us. I think if you look at some of the things that are happening in India now, they're catching up with us. A lot of stuff in the Middle East is going to be catching up with us. Japan's starting to catch up with us.
I wouldn't say that, because
I didn't say they were with us. I said they're catching up to us. They're seeing the things that we saw 8-10 years ago.
I don't know.
Korea is too.
Korea and Japan, I've been there to both these places and dated the women there recently. I would say they are light years, because they're first world women that are thin and feminine. I think we have a unique freak show over here in America that we're dealing with.
It's kind of like I was watching something the day on the America's Cup, where all these people come over from all over these countries, and they say, America does everything big. Well, we do this big too.
Yeah.
But I see it in the movies and medias and stuff of these countries, because I watch all of those. Mm-hmm. I see it seeping into those movies. I see it seeping into their media. It's going to hit them. Now, I think that, when you talk about the Asian countries, they're going to stop it before it gets to the extreme that we are.
Mm-hmm.
But I see it.
Yeah, they. I will say that also the birth rate in those countries is way ahead of us in that stuff.
But so, every country, if I remember right, I was watching a documentary on it the other day. Every country's birth rate is dropping.
Yes, every industrialized nation, not Africa. Africa is going up.
Right, but I'm just saying every country, the industrialized nation or Western philosophy and structure is dropping.
Yes, 100%. That is true.
What does that mean? I guess that
women belong in the kitchen, and we all know it in our hearts.
Take my money.
We all know it in our hearts. Women belong in the kitchen. I'll just say it.
I think what it does do is it means that young men today, if they want a chance for the future, they have to do something now. And that something is to start working on themselves. Start setting and defining what the future is going to be for them and the people around them.
Mr. Wolf, he says, $5 super chat. You can have leadership frame. Some women make terrible partners, and men need to realize a lot of women aren't relationship material. Thoughts? Yeah, 100%. Because we just need to start calling it like how it is. That's really what it is, because there's been so much lying and gaslighting and bullshit for the last, I would say from 2012, Obama's second term, to like 2022 was the worst period of wokeness and everything.
I think it goes farther back than that. I think it goes back to when we entered the 21st century.
On what year's that?
1999, 2000. That's when the worldwide panic began.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you look back in history, it's happened every turn of the century.
What?
What's happened is, it's either spurred the downfall of a nation
Mm-hmm.
or the industrialization and building of a nation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as we've headed into, 2000, and they had in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember that, but in 1999, everyone was
Y2K.
Y2K. Yeah, everybody was, when it turns 2000, everything's going to fall apart, and I think that started a history of dread and victimization in our country.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it didn't happen, everybody says, "You can't believe anybody." That also created a massive distrust.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people started looking at, well, everybody's lying to us. And then that's when basically everyone started saying, well, I knew I was right. They become their own self-expert.
Mm-hmm.
And it was based on how they felt about, that fallacy.
Mm-hmm. I love it. John Elba says, last week, a girl I've been talking to cooked for me at her place. There was something about it that was indescribable, the vibe between us. Yeah, it's a real connection. Zachary Sandman, 199. Wraith is a dad everybody needs. Agreed.
Zach, that's really great. As the old geezer every man needs.
I think that guy left.
Did he?
Yeah.
I just, and that's something else, it's just I'm not offended by it because I am old. But the other side of it is, I've lived a long time, and I've seen a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And, my life experiences is what I share. My knowledge, my wisdom, my education, that's what I share.
Yeah.
And, if you look at all the information that comes to you, if you judge it from a negative aspect, you're going to have a negative outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think also it's valuable to keep a wise counsel if you're a man these days. And by wise counsel, I mean typically, older gentlemen who have had a lot of experience and ended up okay at the end, because a lot of people end up not okay at the end of life.
Right.
And
that, I want everyone to live a long, happy life. That's my goal for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not doing something that's making you happy now, you probably should.
Yeah.
But there comes responsibility from that.
Yeah.
You have to take care of yourself. If you brings people into your life, you have to take care of them.
Yes.
And it's about, men being responsible.
Yeah. Incredibly important. Let's talk about relationships. So, frame, leadership, these are all connected to have a successful relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where can a guy start practicing in the real world for, leading a woman in a relationship or starting to vet? Like, where are some starting points you think we could tell the guys today?
I think, first off, work on yourself, get yourself straightened out to where you can, lead yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And second off, be upfront about your boundaries, your standards, and your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go into it saying, if she says, well, I want a man to take care of me. Oh yeah, I want to take care of a woman. All right. And then try to define that for her when she has her own expectations. And then if she sits there and tells you, this is what I expect being taken care of means, and you say, well, I agree with that 100%, you're not going to change that in her. And it's being man enough, as one person said, to walk away, from that situation, saying, yeah, this isn't going to work for me. You know, and you know yourself from a dating standpoint, it's numbers. And that's the same thing in relationships. It's dating enough women, having enough of those dates, having enough conversations till you find someone that you can agree with and agrees with you.
Yeah.
And be honest about what you want, you know, in a relationship. If you're just out there, you know, plugging holes, I don't have a problem with that. That's the way you want to live your life. But don't come up and say, you know, I plugged a lot of holes. I can't find one that fits me. That, you know, you're not dating with intention of being in a relationship. You're dating with intention of hole plugging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the good news is, like, when you do get dating skills down, it does become pretty fluid. And then your filtration method, the more women you date, the more you're going to know what is a very hard yes and what is a hard no, and what is like your maybes, you know, contextual maybes.
Well, and that comes from those communications and being experienced communicator, listener, and observer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And one of the things that we always talk about is you have to be an observer yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and once you understand and observe yourself and know where you're at, it makes it easier to look at other people and observe what they're doing, where they're coming from. What they say and what they do are two different things. You're going to see that in their actions. You know, she may say, I believe everything you say and I'm going to do it. Well, and then she doesn't. While you're dating her and you say, well, it'll change when we get married. You're only lying to yourself. You know, take the time, get to know her. You know,
Mm-hmm.
how many guys have you known in the groups and stuff that we're in come in and say, yeah, I've been dating this girl for 4 years and she's not what I want? Then why have you wasted 4 years dating her?
Mm-hmm.
Was it the last day of the fourth year that you said, yeah, I just realized it's not what I want? No, there were cues all the way through that relationship. You just didn't want to look at them.
Mm.
And that wasn't her lying to you. That was you lying to yourself.
Mm. Yeah.
You know? And like I said, be honest with yourself, but be honest with them too.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I think really will define a man is truly just start understanding what is your frame.
Right.
What are you okay with? What are you not okay with? Be specific. The more specific you are, the better, right? For example, I'll just use this as an example. I love to cook as my hobby. I love to cook and eat food in my very particular way. And if I'm dating a girl and if she cooks something and it's bad and she asks me, is it good? I'll be like, no, this is pretty bad. And I'll tell her why. Because, you know, I'm actually good at cooking. I'll be like, it has too much salt, or you cooked it too much, or you cooked it too little. And, you know, that way you can really, you know, you have to get comfortable sticking up for yourself.
Right.
You have to get comfortable being okay telling people what you like. Like, one of the things that pisses me off when I see guys, they order something, the menu is completely wrong. A menu item that they get is completely wrong from what they ordered. And they're like, oh, it's okay, I'll just eat it. I'm like, no, dude, if that's not what you want to eat, don't do it. Or when I meet a guy, I'm like, what's your name? Oh, my name's Steve, but my name's actually Steven. My friends call me Steve-O, whatever. Like, okay, what do you want to be called? Oh, you can call me whatever you want, man. Like, okay, I can call you dickhead. Like, no, tell me, how do you prefer to be addressed? But like, yeah, it's just, I fuck it, dude. It's like being in the goddamn Twilight Zone here. Honestly, like, I'm having extreme culture shock to this moment still, you know?
Well, and I can see that coming back from Japan, because in Japan they have a very traditional structure.
Yeah.
And they have a very, in the male society portion of it, they have a very structured hierarchy.
Yes.
And here, all that's gone away.
Yeah.
As you saw, and I'm not going to bring it up again, but as you saw, that comment someone made about me, it's just disrespectful.
Yeah.
And if you don't agree with what I say, don't listen to me. Don't buy my books. Don't go to my YouTube page. I don't care.
Yeah. It's your
but
problem.
At least respect me with the same respect I'm willing to give you. And that comes from the idea of what respect is, and the new social construct of what respect is. What respect really is having something that someone can admire about you. Okay. And you have to start with self-respect. There are things about myself that I can admire. That's not me being conceited. It's me understanding that there are some things I am good at and some things I'm not. Mm-hmm. It's a real evaluation of me looking at my skill set and saying, yeah, I'm good at that. And, I can teach people to be that way. What people do these days, and they confuse respect with courtesy. Everyone has a right to be taught, be spoken to, and given courtesy.
Take my money.
But not everybody has a right for you to respect them. Mm-hmm. Okay. And like I tell people when I work with them, you have my respect because you're wanting to change. You're making the effort to change. Beyond that, I'm going to be courteous to you. But when I say I respect you, I genuinely do respect you for taking the effort and taking the steps to change. And that changes the level of what that word means. Mm-hmm. It's not some society term for people should be courteous to me, which is what they're really saying. Like, people should respect me. Okay, people should be courteous to you. In society, that's a norm. Courtesy is a norm. Mm-hmm. Respect isn't a norm. Respect something you, as I've told you in the lectures. There's three or four things that you can't take from someone. You can't take honesty, truth, love, or respect. All those things have to be given.
Yeah.
And here's the challenge for men. Are you man enough to do that? Because don't expect to receive them if you're not man enough to give them. And that's not blind trust, and that's not blind honesty. It's measured against the person you're giving it to.
Yeah. Mr. Wolf, he says, you can't be wishy-washy. You're being dishonest to your future self and the girl if you date with intention to do it, unless you're just plugging holes. Yeah. Yeah, dude. I mean, I think the big problem that a lot of guys have when it comes down to dating is just not trying. They don't really understand the amount of volume that is necessary to truly have success. Because it's just that amount of volume is mandatory for everybody. You know what I mean? Not just what's
great, and what's created that volume?
A lack of good options in the market.
Dating apps, Instagram, that's created volume. 30 years ago, you dated people in your community.
Yeah.
Well, maybe 40 years ago. I guess I'm older now than I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
But, you dated people in your community. Yeah. And you had a smaller pool of options. And now, with social media and all that stuff, dating apps, you can date 4 towns over, an hour drive away. Most people never used to drive an hour for a date.
Yeah.
So those are the times we're living in, and you have to adapt to them. So where 30 years ago you could date 10 women and maybe find a good one in your community, and that was relative because y'all had the same community values. Okay. Now you're dating worldwide and trying to find a woman with those same values. So, the reality of it is social media dating has only damaged the situation even more.
Yeah. They have this book that I read, and they talked about this grocery store, and they were doing an experiment with jelly. And at each station, they had some jelly, they had some crackers that you could sample it with. And if you liked it, you could buy the jelly on the spot, right?
Right.
And so this was conducted in the year 2000. So it's a pretty relatively new study. And we like to talk about studies on the game room as well to show that everything is just like, data driven here. And there was one stand where there were 6 jars of jam, right? And you could take a little bit of a sample and then you could buy, right? So the other one had 24 jams, right? And so that one had completely different results from the small one. So the small one had 40% of shoppers stop by and 30% of them bought. So out of the 40%, 30% bought. Pretty decent conversion numbers, right?
Mhm.
That's for 6 jams. Now at 24 jams, 60% of the shoppers stopped, and only 3% of the shoppers bought. That's a 10x reduction.
Unlimited options give you unlimited disappointments. That's the only thing I can.
Isn't that crazy though? And then they also said with the 6 jams, people sampled less and bought more. With the 24 jams, people sampled more and bought less.
Yeah, and it goes to human nature. Okay, if you feel you have unlimited options, you're not driven to make decisions.
Right.
Okay, and you've done sales, you know this. You
Right.
make people feel like, and it's just human nature. People buy from scarcity. They hunt from scarcity.
Yeah.
So if you create scarcity, you're more apt to want a product than you are if the options are unlimited.
Mm.
Because now you have time. You can go back and you can buy over the course of the next year, you can buy 8 to 10 of those 26 jams and try them to find the best one. Okay. And you see that in the dating market now too.
Right.
If you have unlimited options, you're going to date a lot of women to see which one meets your goals, but you're not dating with intention. Dating with intention means that you have a limited structure of what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And by having those limitations, you weed out, faster.
Mm-hmm. I think, given the circumstance in America too, and the world, I really think guys should consider the global approach, as in going outside and seeing the world. There really is no excuse to just stay home and, aspire to less. Because
what's the secret there, though? Think about what you just said. What's the secret there? It's participating in going outside and seeing the world.
Yeah, exactly. And it's happening like right now. When you want to talk about America, this is the first time since the 1930s where they had more people leaving the USA last year than coming in, and a lot of it is men. The majority of it is men, and they are seeking brides elsewhere. And men are solving the problem. Women are slipping into a lot of other ways of unhealthily coping. But I think women need to get that. They need to get back in their place too, because everybody's out of place. And that's why everybody's fucked up and unhappy.
Well, I think, like I said, if you look at, like, let's go back to what I was talking about with this people coming over here for the World Cup. All right. They're being told in their countries the same thing we're being told in our countries about this country. Okay. It's a bad place to live. Men hate women. Everybody's racist. All this stuff that everybody's, all the propaganda that's being put out.
Yeah.
And then when people come over here and say, well, it's not like that at all. All right.
They say it's worse.
No, they actually, most of them want to move here now. But,
Yeah.
The reality of it is if your whole life is 6 inches, as I tell my wife, quit living in a 6-inch world.
Yeah.
If your whole life and all your values and stuff come out of a 6-inch world, you're being fed that garbage continuously. And you're not thinking for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're being programmed. It's that simple. You're being programmed what to think, how to feel. And the phones, iPads and everything, computers even, they're perfect for that. Because they hit dopamine receptors in the brain. And you're being fed that as a constant, steady feed of what it is, what life is.
Mm-hmm.
And what your life is. You're being told how you should feel about life.
Right.
You're not experiencing it.
Right.
Your experience is what someone's telling you your experience is.
Right.
And that's why I said, if you want to leave the country and, go to Japan or, Eurasia, Russia, and find a woman with values that you want, you're at least participating in looking.
Yeah. Mongolia.
Yeah.
I'm going to go get a woman with a hawk on her forearm.
Yeah. But like I said, most guys aren't even doing that. They're just sliding or swiping right. Is that what it is? Or left? They're just doing that all day long.
Yeah. That's their selection method. And then they end up alone. And then they wonder, oh, I'm alone.
Yeah.
Tinder has controlled my life.
I mean, I tell people when I work with them, especially young men, because it's surprising how many young men don't know how to communicate with people.
Yeah.
And I tell them, go have conversations.
Right. With everybody.
Yeah, with everybody. If you go into a store and the lady behind the counter or the man behind the counter, strike up a 2-second conversation with them. Hey, how's your day? Mine's doing good. Yeah. You been busy today?
Shut up and take my money.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many people want to communicate or want to connect, even if it's just for a few seconds.
Right.
And what does it do for you? It allows you to start building confidence that you can communicate with people. It forces you to say, this is who I am. Not stuck in your head, this is who you are. It forces you to put that out there for people. I would really like them to know who they are before they do that. But, it's as simple as communicating. Start a conversation. At least have the guts, cojones, to do that. I worked with one guy, and it took me months to get him just to do that. And then when he finally did it, he goes, well, it really wasn't that hard. And now he can approach women.
Yep.
He couldn't approach them before. He was terrified about it.
Yep. Approach will never go out of style.
Yeah. And you're not looking for an outcome. You're not looking to get laid. You're not doing anything. You're just communicating. You're establishing that you can communicate. How many guys have you worked with and took them out on a field trip and they couldn't talk to anyone? Barely talk to the waitress to order a drink.
Yeah.
That's a sad state of the world we're in when people can't talk to each other.
Yeah, and it's the social media is not making anybody social.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't make you social, and it actually, you're brave when you're typing something on a screen. Like the comment the person made to me. You're really brave about that.
Mhm.
But like you said, hey, send $100, you can come on the chat and talk.
Yep.
No, I don't know. I'm not going to do that.
Ran away.
You know yourself. You challenge me to do that, I'll be on your chat.
You know?
Not because I'm conceited or any of that stuff. It's okay. This is why I think you're wrong. I want to talk to you about why I think you're wrong, and you may convince me that I'm wrong.
Yeah. But at least we're having a conversation.
Right. I'm having a conversation, and we're exchanging ideas. And a lot of guys can't even do that from, just a courtesy standpoint.
I think with everything that's happening now, I think truly that the guys don't actually get their shit together, they will end up alone.
Cool.
I think there's a large cohort of men don't realize they're heading straight to a life at the end when they're all alone.
But here's the thing: there's also a lot of women that way too.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking to the men here.
Yeah.
Mr. Wolf says $2 super chat. What has been your outcome from women clients? You want to go? You can ask. You can do that.
Somewhat successful, I guess. Most women don't reach out to a male life coach to give them advice because they're already predetermined with what they think they want. And men, I can challenge. Women, when I challenge them, they think, well, he's just a young geezer. So, I mean, I've worked with women, and I guess I'm about 50% by 50%.
I've worked with a few women, and 2 of them got married and had kids.
Well, and I've worked with probably 10, and 5 of them have changed, and they're in relationships now and that kind of stuff. The other 5 were kind of like, yeah, that's not for me. Okay. I'm not forcing you to change. But like I said, I don't profess to be a female coach. I coach men, predominantly. And like I said, most women don't want to accept that they own at least 50% of responsibility. Now my wife, she's had a little bit better success, so but she's a little bit more brutal with women than I am. So, but I'll turn them over to her and listen to sometime every once in a while. I'll listen to a conversation. Woo.
Yeah. Well, I think what's really important that guys must understand ultimately is like when it comes down to truly having success in relationships, the concept of frame is the most important part. And if you don't have frame, you're building everything on a house of sand, or a foundation of sand. And it's just such a deep concept that requires just so much more longer explanation. We're gonna wrap it up here.
Well, before we go do that, let me just say this: I've written 4 books on frame.
Yes.
And I've sent you copies of each one of them. And frame is important. It is the basis for how you see the world and how you want the world to see you guys. If you're not working on that, then you're shortchanging yourself on finding out who you really are, what you really want in life. Buy my books, don't buy my books. That's up to you. But you got to start somewhere. And, you can join men and we'll work through it in there, or you can buy my books, or you can get a hold of me and we'll talk. But like I said, John is right. Frame is the most important thing about understanding yourself so you can understand the world and the relationships that you're trying to get into.
Yeah. And for people that are looking for Wraith's books, we will put a link here in the chat, as well as his YouTube channel. If you take a look here, I will pull it up right now. Okay, so this is Wraith's YouTube channel. It's Reflections of the Masculine Journey with Wraith. He's just getting started out. However, he has been doing it forever. All of his books are here on Amazon, and I'll put them in the link in the in the chat. You can see it right there. But check out Wraith, and I'll also put his YouTube channel in the chat. You guys can subscribe. Wraith will be on one day with Paul and I, and you guys will be able to continue to learn. If you liked today's episode, definitely leave us a comment, like, and or subscribe, and we'll be back next week talking about more. Maybe Wraith will be back for part 2. You guys let us know. Join my free Telegram, pop in there, give us some feedback. What do you like? What do you dislike? How can we help you better? And until then, we'll catch you next time.